The SEC Unfiltered Tour will be on hand when Vanderbilt and LSU do battle in Nashville. This is our full preview and prediction of Saturday's contest between the Commodores and the Tigers. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Phillips. He's Cole the Bear Thompson. We appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. As always, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. We're on the race to 30,000 subscribers on YouTube. We can't do it without your love and support. Also, guys, make sure you check out our friends over at FanDuel because, as always, we are brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, FanDuel.com/SECU to join today and get started with $250 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. Once again, that's FanDuel.com/SECU to get in on the action today. Vanderbilt and LSU do battle at FirstBank Stadium in what may be the biggest game of the Clark Lee era in Nashville. Meanwhile, it's the LSU Tigers who find themselves in an interesting predicament, sitting at 5-1, but by the tone of the fan base, you would not know it because of some of the shortcomings on the offensive side and some other things that haven't gone the way of the Bayou. We are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down what should be an epic matchup here in Nashville, Tennessee, as we'll be there on firsthand. The SEC Unfiltered Tour hits the Music City to watch the Tigers and the Doors do battle. Guys, as always, I'm Chris Phillips. Joining me, once again, the best in the business. You know him. He's Cole the Bear Thompson. Bear, what's going on, man? Appreciate you taking the time. Really excited to break down this game with you. This is going to be a fun one.
I want everyone to remember October 18th. Get that date circled in your mind. Make sure that it's pinpoint. You have no plans that afternoon. You have no plans in the evening because it's going to be a separation Saturday. But Chris Phillips, who would have thought on October 18th we'd be talking about LSU's playoff hopes being in the hands on what Diego Pavia and the surging Commodores are looking to do as they try to get right back into the postseason picture. A lot of chaos last week in college football. You get a bye week. You get time to regroup, reassess. You're also coming in at 5-1, and you've shown up and shown out. What are we going to get from Diego Pavia fully healthy, and what are the changes we're going to see from Vanderbilt to make this a four-quarter game and maybe pull off the biggest upset since last season when they took down Alabama at FirstBank Stadium?
Yeah, Bear, it's going to be a fun one again in the Music City. SEC Unfiltered officially on hand. I won't spend a ton of time, Bear, because I could take up much more of this show than I should, but that is our lead storyline. That is our lead topic, of course. The SEC Unfiltered Tour will be on hand. Obviously, last time that I was there was last year at FirstBank. This will be the first time, the Bear, I've ever seen the end zone completed. You might recall last year construction was still going on in that one end zone. Now that is complete, now that is finished, we know that lot 2 will be rocking. And selfishly, as someone who now lives in Nashville, Tennessee, the community that we have built here now to this point from when I moved here in May, I can't put into words how excited I am to be doing a tour event in my home city. Also excited to sleep in my bed on a weekend for the first time since mid-August. But either way, beside the point, really, really pumped. So many great Commodores and Tigers alike. But I know the Doors are really excited to have us, the Lot 2 folks, from Broadway to Midtown to FirstBank Stadium and everywhere in between. Selfishly, I am super, super pumped for this weekend and what it's going to entail. Again, the game, though, taking place is the feature event, Bear, this weekend, this Saturday, 11 a.m. Central, airing on ABC at FirstBank Stadium. Bear, Vanderbilt, I don't know if it was to the surprise of most or if most expected this, but Vandy opened as a favorite in this football game, a 1.5-point favorite. Bear, the number has increased. The money is coming in on the Commodores. Vandy now sits, as of Monday morning, as a 2.5-point favorite. The over-under set at 48.5. Bear, LSU leads the all-time series 25-7-1, and the last meeting, of course, came last year. LSU won that game down in Baton Rouge by a final score of 24-17. Bear, I want to go back to that, though. Vandy is favored in this football game.
Yep.
How surprised were you, if at all? What does it mean to you? Once again, our friends over at FanDuel, whether you agree or disagree with them, go place your action right now, FanDuel.com/SECU. But, Bear, we've seen this with Vegas, where numbers will come out from our friends at FanDuel. It feels like it's almost too easy one side or the other. And typically when it's too easy, it is. So I don't know if there were a lot that were surprised by this, taken aback, because of there's still this lack of respect for the Doors. But I think that's what it tells me, Bear, is this really goes to show you how far Clark Lee has brought this program, how far Vandy has come, and also some of the very obvious deficiencies that this LSU football team has. How much does the home crowd and the home atmosphere really factor in? I know Vegas typically gives 3 points, not taking anything away or trying to knock on FirstBank Stadium, but it's not exactly like playing at Death Valley down in Baton Rouge. But either way, the Commodores are favored in this game over the LSU Tigers. Even the most optimistic of Door fan in the preseason, they probably would have called me crazy, Bear, and you probably would have called me crazy had I told you in the preseason Vandy would be favored to win this football game. What does it say to you?
Not only has Vanderbilt turned the corner, but they're looking at offensive numbers as the selling point in this matchup. Because you look at Vanderbilt and LSU defensively, LSU has Vanderbilt beaten almost every category. Now, in some, it's very close. We're talking about a top 20 scoring defense versus a top 25 scoring defense. There's very little separation. You talk about a pass defense that's allowing less than 200 yards through the air and one that's allowing over 217 through the air. Still, LSU has that number. We're looking at the offensive metrics, and the metrics say Vanderbilt is miles ahead of where LSU is offensively. And if they play a clean game, they come out with a game plan that's going to be precise, prolific, and not put the ball in harm's way, they should win this football game. And the numbers don't lie. I mean, trust me, we lie as individuals, but numbers are numbers. They come out, they stare you in the face, and they say, you may not like it, but you can change that. Unfortunately, this is what it says. Vanderbilt's a top 5 scoring offense in the country. They had a horrendous performance in the red zone against Alabama. 2 blatantly disrespectful turnovers, both by Diego Pavia, and yet they're still averaging 47.3 points per game. They're still averaging over 400 total yards of offense per contest. They're in the top 30 in rushing. LSU is 113th in rushing. LSU's outside the top 70 in passing. LSU's outside the top 40 in total yards and in scoring. So it's showing you that even though LSU went very big in the portal, they went and they fixed the defense. They went out and they brought in some good offensive weapons. The way that we're watching this Vanderbilt team come together underneath Beck and underneath Jerry Kill, along with a guy in Clark Lee, year 2, Diego Pavia, taking on that identity, carries a little bit of weight. And that's why I think that you're looking at Vanderbilt being favored. It's not just because it's a home matchup. It's because of we know more about where Vanderbilt is as a program at this point, and it's a scary thing. Here's the other scary thing. All it takes is one game for LSU and the offense to start rolling before they become an unstoppable force to counteract that defense.
Yeah, Bear, we keep waiting for this LSU football team to turn the corner, and you just wonder, does that corner exist for them? I think it's so interesting with LSU. There's not a more disgruntled fan base in the entire country that is winning, and they are winning. I mean, they're 5-1, right? It's not like they're 1-5 or sitting at 3-2 or a 2-4 or whatever. They're 5-1. Now, that one loss was really disappointing. It came to a rival in Ole Miss, and I know that's one they've probably been stewing over for a few weeks. And I get it's because of how it has looked, too. The offensive product has not been good. Garrett Nussmeier's inconsistency, which is something that we need to talk about. We're going to talk about. But I do find it fascinating, Bear. Like, this LSU fan base, I know it's not a storyline that impacts the game necessarily. Maybe it does a little bit. How they travel, I'm fascinated by, because typically Vandy is a spot where the opposing fan base, let's call it for what it is, they come in. If they don't take over the stadium, they at least have, it's like 50-50. Like last year when I came here for the Texas game, Vandy, Texas, the stadium was 50-50. I mean, Texas essentially took over the entire opposite side of the stadium. I wonder if that happens in this game, because I don't know how jacked up LSU people are. I mean, they're not even staying to the fourth quarter of a home game that's a 1-score game, much less hitting the road to Nashville, Tennessee, that's a solid 8-hour trip away. So I am really, really curious what the attendance from LSU folks look like, but also they just feel like a fan base to me, Bear. They are at a boiling point. They are ready to explode at any moment. They feel so ready to me. They're like, give me one good reason. And this LSU offense has been a reason, but they're so ready to snap on Brian Kelly and snap on everything going on. And I'm not like, this isn't going to make them feel good, but Bear, Vandy may give them that very wish. They may grant them that privilege to snap, because if things go south in Nashville, whether Vandy's favored or not, you haven't seen a fan base spiral like the LSU fan base will spiral.
No, like, if you ever seen the TV show Friday Night Lights in season 1, Matt Saracen has to come in and play quarterback, and he loses a football game. They're still one of the favorites to win the state championship, but Saracen is not viewed as the right guy. So Buddy goes and he calls up coach and he says, hey, you know what? We're going to bring in Voodoo Tatum. and Voodoo's coming on in from New Orleans from the Hurricane Katrina atmosphere, and he's going to be a better quarterback for us. And they do that because of, even though they're winning football games, they realize that the quarterback's a problem. We all hyped up Garrett Nussmeier to be this guy that is supposed to hit 4,000 passing yards because he did so last year. He's supposed to lead the country in passing touchdowns because he almost did that last season. He's supposed to take that next jump forward, like Jaden Daniels in 23 and Joe Burrow in 2019. And it's not happening. And the crazy part is, Chris, he's making the dumbest mistakes at the wrong time to where even I, as a big-time supporter, can't defend him anymore. Like, I can't say when you're in the red zone against South Carolina and you know that the last thing you want to do is put the ball in reach on a slant pattern for somebody to jump the route and run it back. That's a veteran move. That's a veteran thing that you're supposed to know. So why are you making those mistakes? Why are you putting the ball in harm's way when you have over a dozen starts under your belt? You're talking about 21 starts in your career, and you're supposed to be the fixture of the offense. And you're making these critical errors. And again, you can't run the football. You were finally able to get some momentum going against South Carolina. You averaged 6 yards a play, over 100 rushing yards. Caden Durham fully healthy. Jujuan Johnson's a really good secondary piece. But you're going up against a very good run defense. So now we're asking ourselves, okay, are we putting the ball back in Garrett Nussmeier's hands where he is going to have to win the battle against a solid, not elite, but a solid secondary that still can force turnovers? And our wide receivers, if they don't finish the routes and they don't finish the actual execution, ball lands in the wrong place. And now we give the ball to Diego Pavia in an offense that's averaging 47 points per game. So the frustrations are valid there, even though you're winning. You expected to be taking that next jump forward. Alabama right now feels like that they're in the driver's seat to be an SEC title contender. It's year 2 with Kalen DeBoer. It's year 4 for Brian Kelly. And once again, we're having the yeah, but conversations. And it's infuriating because yeah, but we went out and added in that. Yeah, we brought in some really good defensive pieces, but our offense can't move the football to save its life. Yeah, we forced 5 turnovers in a game. Yeah, but our run game is slow as molasses. We might as well just throw it, and our quarterback's not able to get the job done. So there's reasons when you say to yourself, we view our program as a national title built contender, and you show up and you look more so like a 9-3 team year in and year out. I get the frustrations. But again, all it takes is one game to turn things on. Look at what happened with Arch Manning down in Dallas in the Red River Shootout. If that version of Arch shows on up and the rest of the team responds the way they do, Texas is right back in the hunt for the college football playoff. If Nuss has finally that game against a quality defense, you're right back in the hunt to go to Atlanta and potentially a college football playoff berth. I mean, still, you're a top 10 team by most people's metrics going into week 8.
So as we discuss Garrett Nussmeier and taking care of the football bear, obviously I think is going to be a massive, massive point of emphasis for him. I do think, can LSU, was that a blip on the radar when it comes to running the football? Or is that going to be something they're able to do consistently? Like I think they're going to have to do that to beat Vanderbilt and win this football game and have any chance, like you said, to achieve any of their preseason expectations. Because I just don't think you have to. Sometimes you just have to accept it. I think you have to accept Garrett Nussmeier is who he is. He's not going to solely carry you where you're trying to go. Granted, probably it's unfair to ask him to do that. It's unfair to ask him to carry an offense that struggles to run the football consistently over and over and over again. So you need that secondary punch, as you like to say. You need that other option. You need that way, that you can go to the well and win a football game and not put it all on Garrett Nussmeier, because he will make mistakes if he's got to put the team on his back and play hero ball. What I was going to say too, and I think it's interesting to point out, Vanderbilt typically plays really fundamentally sound football. Like you're going to need to play a fundamentally sound game to beat them. However, they are coming off of a game. Granted, they just came off the bye week. They are coming off of a game at Alabama. If you want to call it pressing, if you want to call it uncharacteristic mistakes, whatever you want to call it, multiple turnovers in the football game, turnovers in the red zone. Bear, it goes without saying. And listen, Vanderbilt, Vanderbilt is much improved from what they've been in years past, but it still goes without saying. Making mistakes such as that is not a recipe to winning big-time football games in this league. Vanderbilt will have to clean it up and get back to playing fundamentally sound football, winning the turnover battle, winning the time of possession. What did Diego Pavia say going into Tuscaloosa? We got to play Vandy football. If we play Vandy football, it won't be close. Bear, I think if they play Vandy football this weekend, it might not be close.
Yeah.
But you got to play Vandy football. You got to win time of possession. You got to take care of the football. You got to convert on third downs. You got to take advantage and make big plays when they're there defensively. You got to be the aggressor on defense. Like, those are things they did not do in Tuscaloosa, at least not at a well enough clip. And again, Diego Pavia be the first to raise his hand up and say, hey, I can't turn the ball over down by the goal line, Bear. I can't throw that pass. I can't force that ball into coverage. There's just things you cannot do. So I'm curious to see how Vanderbilt responds from that game in Tuscaloosa a couple weeks ago. They've had time to stew over that. They've had time to think about that. They've had time to make the adjustments and learn from their mistakes. And I think, too, Bear, you're going to see a little bit of a looser, dare I say, Vandy. I mean, they already play pretty loose, but it almost felt like that Vandy game. There was so much extra on that game, maybe externally. And I think coming back home, not having quite I don't know if a lot of that pressure was self-inflicted, the revenge factor from last year in that ballgame. It's a much different dynamic, right? That game was very unique in its own right. So, but you got to get back to playing Vandy football. If you can do that, you're going to put a lot of the pressure on LSU to do some things that they haven't done a ton this season, which, again, is play clean football themselves.
I think that the other thing that you're going to have to reward yourself on is getting some turnovers inside the red zone. You're going to have to stall some drives from LSU. Because look at the South Carolina game. South Carolina, they lost by 10. But largely, the ineptitude of their offense kind of kept them out of the end zone, more so than LSU had an exceptional defensive day. Credit, LSU's defense is great. And LSU's defense is one of the best in the SEC, if not the best in the SEC. But South Carolina got an interception at the goal line. They got a fumble at the goal line, and they got another interception inside the red zone. So they had 3 turnovers that all could have been scoring drives in favor of the Tigers that would have put this game away, and it would have probably been the nail in the coffin. So you got to look at it from the perspective of Vanderbilt. If they're down inside the 20, can we force Garrett Nussmeier into making a critical error the way that Diego Pavia made a critical error against Alabama, and then make sure that they don't get points? Even if we don't score, what we're going to do is we're going to play keep away from the end zone. And so we're going to take the ball, we're going to get a couple first downs, get to midfield, and then punt it. And when they were at the 7-yard line and they coughed up a fumble or they had a bad interception, you know what's going to happen? We're going to pin them all the way back at their 1-yard line and make them do it again. And even if they win the time possession, what we're going to do is we're going to slow down that offense and keep them out of the end zone to give our offense as much time as possible to come up with a game plan on the next series to be able to go ahead and strike and put it in the end zone. That's one thing that you have to do. You are 100% right. You got to play Vanderbilt football. You got to be better on third down. I mean, you went 5 of 11 against Alabama. Usually that's not a bad day, but the problem is that's a bad day when you get inside the red zone and you can't even walk away with 3 points because of a fumble and because of an interception. So you're going to have to be able to be more efficient on third down. Even if you get down to like the 1-yard line, you settle for a field goal in that standpoint. Being efficient when it comes to moving the sticks and owning that time possession kind of go together hand in hand. And those have been 2 of the biggest strengths for Vanderbilt over the last 2 years with Diego Pavia. You also are going to have to see a wide receiver break on open. I don't know who that's going to be. You know, last week against Alabama, or 2 weeks ago against Alabama when they had the bye, Junior Sherrill had a team leading 6 catches for 49 yards. Cole Spence was second with 2 catches for 45, and one of those yards was a 33-yard pickup. So somebody has got to show that they can be an elemental punch opposite of Junior Sherrill. Maybe this is Eli Stowers. Maybe we go back to Trey Richardson. Maybe it is Junior Sherrill, and you throw in a Cedric Alexander out of the backfield. Tristan Bowen gets a little bit involved. But you got to have another weapon that can go ahead and take some pressure off of you. And then also, I'm just going to say it, I think that you need to have some design runs for Diego Pavia. Like, I know that it's frustrating to say, why would you want to run your quarterback against this defense? Because you got to play his game. And sometimes playing your game frustrates defense coordinators so much that they will make the critical error for you that then gives you the opportunity to capitalize and strike. So that's something that I'm looking for, especially for Vanderbilt in this game. And if you're Blake Baker, I don't care who you have back there, but you are scheming up every way possible to get one of your linebackers playing that spiral against number 2. Like this entire week, 7:40, they better have their eyes fixated on that scout team quarterback. He goes to the sideline to get a water. You go ahead and pick it up for him and say, don't worry, baby. I got you all day. We're going to be right attached at the hip because that's what I got to do on Saturday. Pavia's number 1 answer in that standpoint.
Yeah, it's interesting, Bear, and I think we've actually kudos to us for being able to talk about so many other factors in this game that are not Diego Pavia, because I think, that is one of the key factors here, and something that we could have just spent the entire show talking about. But because, you mentioned it, and yeah, I think Vandy'd be crazy not to use Diego Pavia early and often in the run game. He's leading the team in rushing by about 33 yards. His 352 rushing yards. Cedric Alexander right behind him with 319. There's other guys, and certainly I think when it comes to Vanderbilt, how other guys outside of the quarterback position step up. Cedric Alexander, Eli Stowers Jr., Sherrill, Trey Richardson, amongst a host of others. Those are key factors and key things we need to discuss. But it all comes down to Diego Pavia. If Vanderbilt is going to go out, make a statement on Saturday, even though they're favored, and I still think it'd be a statement, make a statement that, hey, like, we're for real about this playoff thing. Like we are for real, legitimate college football playoff contenders. Y'all write us off because y'all see the V and y'all think of, it's little old Vandy. And, people are so quick to write them off. It's so easy to write off Vandy in such this crowded SEC. Who's legit? Who's not? This whole month of October, we're trying to figure out contenders, pretenders. It all comes back to QB1 in Nashville, and that is Diego Pavia. This is his opportunity to make a big-time statement against what you mentioned, Blake Baker and company, a really, really good defense. He's going to need to have an exceptional day. And again, that's not doing anything outside of what he's comfortable doing. Just play your game. Play your game. He once said, Vandy, we two turn. Like, be that guy. Be that playmaker. Be that spark plug. Be that energy. Be that. I think throwing the football, running the football, I trust they're going to have a really good game plan in place. They're going to need one. That's the matchup, I think, of the day. Blake Baker scheming up against Diego Pavia in that offense. I mean, the good news for Vandy is this, because I kind of equate and look back at last week, Lenoris Sellers, what he was able to do. I think you got a far superior offensive line and protection for Diego Pavia than what you saw a week ago. So a different challenge for LSU. But, we can talk about all the guys outside of the quarterback position, but for Vandy, it comes down to QB1. I mean, flat out, there is no more important player on the field in this football game, in my opinion, than Diego Pavia. And I don't even think that's a hot take. I just think every time he steps on the field, he's got an opportunity to change the game. They win. It's not surprisingly, I think you're going to be looking at a pretty damn good stat line from QB1. So
I don't think it's a hot take. I will say you are right on the money about Diego Pavia. I think it's wrong because the most important player on the field is Garrett Nussmeier. This is Garrett Nussmeier's game. You have fans that have already said, we want Michael Van Buren. You have fans that have already said, we're done with you. You shouldn't have left last season. You're not getting any better. You had a bad interception inside the goal line. You had another bad interception earlier on in this game. You've had some really errant throws and you haven't been able to connect. So I think at this point, much like we heard last week with Arch Manning being college football's biggest flop, that ignited him to have a career day and to have a performance worth talking about. And he didn't have to be the main character in the story, but he was at least a big-time supporting cast member in what inevitably was an epic Red River shootout for Texas offense. That's what you need from Garrett Nussmeier. It's still Vandy in the eyes of most people down at LSU. There's people out there that are laughing that I say that Vanderbilt can be in the college football playoff. It's not your mom and pop's Vandy, but until they actually show you on a consistent basis that times have changed in Nashville with Clark Lee, yeah, I understand where you come from. So treat it that way. It's little old Vandy. We should be able to beat up on them, take our advantages, win our one-on-one battles, and punch it into the end zone. But the key matchup in this game, in my humble opinion, is Trey'Dez Green versus whoever the hell they're putting against him. I'm going to take a wild guess and say that's going to be Randon Fontenette, the the star defender. If it's not him, it may end up being Brian Longwell. But this is a guy that last week had over 119 yards and 6 catches. He is a freak. Like you and I talked about this on Sunday Fun. He is the Nick Harbor of Baton Rouge. And what's crazy is the way that he's playing right now, he's a better version of Nick Harbor than what Nick Harbor is. That's how scary of a mismatch nightmare can be. So if you're Garrett Nussmeier, death taxes, find the tight end when you're in a tight pinch, and get the ball moving. That, to me, will decide this matchup. You come from a football background. This is not your first rodeo. This is not your first road test. This is not your first time running an offense for Joe Sloan. You understand what is at stake. It's time to start acting like it. Because if you don't do it by the first half, Michael Van Buren probably is going to have an opportunity to get in it in the second. And all the things that we talked about this offseason about what you were supposed to be, it goes out the window. So you're right. Diego Pavia is the most important player for Vanderbilt. But in my humble opinion, I've seen Garrett Nussmeier live up to the billing. I've seen him be able to meet the moment. I've seen him be able to act like he's been there before. He's got to do it on Saturday at FirstBank Stadium. And I don't care that's little old Vandy. That's a top 15 team in college football. And that's a team that they play their cards right, is punching their ticket to the postseason. And you're sitting at home wondering what could have been in another what-if year of Baton Rouge.
Bear, simply I'll ask, is this the biggest game of the Clark Lee era? Yes or no?
Yes, because of now expectations are actually met. The Bama game last season was a flyer. It was a once-in-a-lifetime moment. People at this point are having conversations, including me. Vandy wins. They're in the driver's seat to make a run to the college football playoff. Make that dream a reality. You've said forever you've wanted to turn Vandy into a program that can actually be the next big thing in the SEC. You're knocking on the door. You are right at the door. Don't knock on it. Break it the hell down if you want to make sure if that's going to be the way to get on in. Break it the hell down and leave no studs behind. Do that.
Yeah, Bear, I'm not over-exaggerating because I'm going to be at the game and I'm fired up for it. But yeah, it's the biggest game in the Clark Lee era, and I think it's one of the biggest in Vanderbilt history. I really do. Because I think of what this win, if you were able to get it, the domino effect that could occur here. I mean, I think this is one of those games, if you're Vandy, and heck, let's say if you're LSU too, like this is one of those games that serves as a playoff game before the playoffs. This is kind of a playoff game for both sides. Both sitting there with one loss. The loser of this one is going to have really, really tough sledding getting there when you look at both these teams' schedules and just trying to navigate the second half of the season undefeated in today's college football just feels like it's nearly impossible with all the parity and the craziness on a week-in, week-out basis. Yeah, this one's a playoff game, I think. And so I think for Vandy, certainly the biggest game in the Clark Lee era, probably one of the biggest in school history. You know, for LSU, you don't say that, but it's a big one. It's a very big one. They need it. It feels like a can't lose for Brian Kelly and the Tigers. But again, something's going to give on Saturday. Going to be a lot of fun. Bear, that being said, let's get into our picks. Let's get into our predictions. I'm going to let you start this one, my friend.
Look, I think that LSU still can go on a run to the college football playoff. I'm not selling my stock just yet. I still see a scenario where every team in the SEC is going to lose one more game, and that includes the teams that have yet to lose a game in the SEC. So Texas A&M, when is death coming knocking on your door? Ole Miss, when is death coming and knocking on your door? Is it this weekend in Fayetteville? Is it this weekend in Athens? Maybe is the case. I think that every team is going to lose at least one more game. That's how much parity there is in the SEC. If you're Garrett Nussmeier, you have got to get back to the fundamentals. You have got to get back to playing just basic football that you were taught in Pop Warner League. Don't put the ball in harm's way when you're running a double slant pattern and making sure that you got a defensive back that can jump the route, because Vanderbilt can do that to you. I think the other thing is that you got to take what you did last week, realizing that even if you are seeing some promise in the passing attack, you got to run it down people's throat. The thing with LSU is they veer away from the run, and it's why their numbers are all askew, but you're starting to find that balance with Caden Durham and Jujuwan Johnson. They're out there. They're making plays. They averaged 6.2 yards a play last week. You got to be able to put pressure on Clark Lee's defense to corral the box and then get your deep shots down the field. And the other thing that you got to do if you're LSU, you got to be able to avoid the dumb penalties and win on third down. Last week, Alabama had fewer penalties and was better on third down than Vanderbilt was. If they play that version with what talent they have, with what numbers and production they have, it's very hard for me to doubt that we're going to see LSU lose this football game. And yet, LSU is going to lose this football game. LSU is not going to be able to go into FirstBank Stadium. They are not going to be able to get past Clark Lee, and that's because Diego Pavia needs to have his moment. We're all doubting Diego at this point. We're all sitting here and saying, well, Diego Pavia, what did he really do? He wasn't able to go beat up on Alabama. Now he's an overrated quarterback. Oh, look at him being a dummy by doing the practice kneel down instead of trying to get passes downfield. And people wired like Diego Pavia, you got to realize they do that mistake one time, they throw it out, and they never let it bother them again. They pretend like it didn't happen. But in the back of their brains, they realize what happened. They realize how big of a fool they looked. They realized how idiotic it seemed. And you know what? He doesn't want to feel that way again out in Nashville. He doesn't want to feel like that he let his team down. He doesn't want to feel like that he let a program down. And he certainly doesn't want to feel like he let himself down. He's bet on himself his entire life. And that's when you see the most epic performances of epic performances. Vanderbilt's going to win this football game. Vanderbilt's going to cover this football game. Vanderbilt's going to get its signature win and put itself right back in the conversation for the college football playoff. And the only thing I fear at this point, if I am a Vanderbilt fan, the last time we were really good, our coach hightailed it off to State College, Pennsylvania. And Clark Lee is going to get at least a few phone calls from people out there. If everyone else turns it down and says, hey, you've changed the culture out in Nashville. Okay, you changed the culture out in State College for the better. Final score, Vanderbilt 31. My bad, Vanderbilt 30, LSU 24. I think the Commodores do enough to get the job done. And Diego Pavia, the legend of Baba Yaga, survives another week en route to a college football playoff appearance.
Vanderbilt 30, LSU 24. Good pick, Bear. It's a really good pick. Again, our friends are at FanDuel. Vandy, a 2.5-point favorite, over-under set at 48.5. Yeah, you know, Bear, typically, and again, first off, let me go back and say, so stoked for the SEC Unfiltered Tour to be here. So stoked selfishly to be in my home city of Nashville, get out and about with all these folks, hang out with our Vandy friends and colleagues, and be at Lot 2 and be back at FirstBank. And yeah, this is going to be a really fun, emotional week for me and an emotional weekend. And I've been super excited about it for weeks. That being said, when it comes to the game, Bear, you know, normally when I give a prediction like this, I try to include some flair for the dramatics, and especially when it's one where maybe you feel like you're going against the grain a little bit. But Bear, I think Vandy wins, and I don't think this game's close. I really don't. I don't think LSU's a very good football team. I'll be totally honest with you. Like, they've been cheating death a lot this season, and there's a lot of talent with this group. Don't get me wrong. Lots of talent. Hell, they paid for it. They know. But I've just seen nothing from LSU to this point where I'm really, I'm inspired by the play that I'm seeing. Garrett Nussmeier is extremely inconsistent. They are soft as Charmin up front. Now, they're good on defense. They're really good. And I love Blake Baker, the defensive coordinator. But there's just this energy around LSU right now that I'm not a big fan of. There's this energy around LSU where I don't want to call it toxic, but a real negative, you're winning and you're still pissed off. You're not even having fun watching football. I doubt the guys are having much fun playing football at this point. Their media is not having much fun covering football. And on the other side, you got Vandy. High flying, wheeling and dealing. We got nothing to lose. Gunslinging. Let's go let it all hang. Nobody's having more of a blast in the doors. Nobody's having more fun than the folks in Nashville. Nobody. And it comes down to, I trust Clark Lee and Diego Pavia more than I trust Brian Kelly and Garrett Nussmeier. I just, nothing in this game aligns well for me when I look at it from the LSU perspective. They might have more talent top to bottom, but they're not a better football team. They're not. And I think that's going to show on Saturday. I think the tailgate's going to be rocking out at Lot 2. I think FirstBank's going to be rocking. And again, I don't really feel the need for the flair for dramatics here because I don't think it's close. I think Garrett Nussmeier makes a few critical mistakes. He is who he is. I don't trust that LSU is going to be able to run the football again. I think that'll be more of a blip on the radar, what they did against South Carolina, than it will be anything. And I think Vanderbilt, coming off the bye week, they learn from the mistakes they made in Tuscaloosa. I think they get back to playing Vandy football. And what did Diego Pavia say going into T-Town? If we play Vandy football, the ball game won't be close. If they play Vandy football, this ball game won't be close. They're going to get back to playing Vandy football. They're going to be relentless on the defensive side, living in Garrett Nussmeier's back pocket. Diego Pavia is going to take care of the football, using his legs, using his arms. Other guys are going to step up around him. Cedric Alexander, Eli Stowers, Junior Sherrill, amongst a host of others. They're going to win the time of possession battle. They're going to be fundamentally sound. Clark Lee and company are going to have a good game plan in place. And, Bear, I think that's going to lead to a 27-13 Vanderbilt win. I don't think there will be any doubt left who the better team was. I really don't. There will be no doubt left who the better team was on this Saturday, and I think who the better team is, period. You can go out in the portal and spend tons of money and do whatever you like, but at the end of the day, if you don't have the right guy at head coach and the pieces don't come together, doesn't mean a whole lot. And I'm not saying anything that I think LSU fans will find crazy. I'm really starting to doubt whether Brian Kelly's the right guy. We can dance around this question all we want. I don't know that he's really the guy to get LSU where they want to go. I certainly don't think he's the guy to go in here and win this football game. I'm starting to lose a lot of trust in BK. But what I do trust is, again, Clark Lee, Diego Pavia. They're going to come out, play Vandy football. I think they're going to smack LSU in the mouth. And I think they get a 2-score win. Vandy 27, LSU 13. Leave no doubt doors. Anchor down. We'll see you out at Lot 2. We're going to have a fun weekend this weekend. So,
who would have thought that we'd be having a conversation about Vanderbilt legitimately being a threat to win the SEC? Because remember, this also keeps that hope alive. We don't see a look at what goes on with the college football playoff. They still have an opportunity to get to Atlanta.
Yeah, college football playoff hopes are real in Nashville. And I'll say this too, Bear. From the gambling perspective, whether you want to write this off or not, when it's too easy, it is. So I think there's some people out there that they probably saw that line. They're like, there's no way, dude. LSU, even though the money, by the way, is coming in on the doors. But you saw that line and you're like, dude, no way, right? I think way. There's a reason I think Vandy's favored. I mean, I just bottom line. There's a reason they are favored. I think that's going to show on Saturday. So who to thunk it before the season started? Bear and I both going with the Commodores to beat LSU. We'd love to hear your thoughts. You agree with us? You disagree? Who's going to win Saturday's game in Nashville? LSU or Vandy? Guys, it's going to do all for us. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Before we get out of here, do want to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel, because as always, we are brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel's got an offer you don't want to miss this NFL season. New customers can bet just $5 and get 300 bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet $5. If it wins, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. You can build parlays, bet player props, ride the live lines, whatever your style. FanDuel's got you covered. The NFL season is here. The only question is, are you ready to play? Visit FanDuel.com/SECU to download the FanDuel app and get started. Once again, FanDuel.com/SECU to get in on the action today. Guys, once again, appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button as we're on the race to 30,000 subs on YouTube. Check us out wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us across all social media platforms. And check out our website, secunfiltered.com. For Cole the Bear Thompson, I'm Chris Phillips. We're signing off. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in, and we'll see you this weekend in Nashville.